You're listening to the Technology for Mindfulness podcast, episode 72, hosted by me, Robert Plotkin. Today I'm going to be speaking with David Klein, the founder and chief experience officer of America Offline, reconnecting America through transformational offline experiences. David is passionate about reconnecting through various learning and development programs. You can find out more about David at americaoffline.info. I'm extremely pleased to welcome David Klein to the Technology for Mindfulness podcast.
Hi, David, and welcome to the Technology for Mindfulness podcast.
Robert, thank you for having me here. I'm really looking forward to today.
Yeah, same here. I'd love for you to tell people what motivated you to start America Offline and be working on getting young people to be together in the real world.
Okay, I will try to put it in a nutshell for you. It's a long story, but I'll give you.
There must have been something that got you so inspired or concerned or both that you decided to start this venture and put so much of your own time and energy and experience into it.
For sure. So my whole life, I grew up playing sports, and I still to this day think that sports was really allowed me to be who I am today. And so all growing up, I was playing sports. My sport of choice was baseball. I loved just playing with teammates. I loved grinding it out on the field. And when I was done playing baseball in college, I wanted to start my own semi-professional collegiate team. And that's exactly what I did. And so that was when I really started working with youth and teens. And I ran a program in California, a nonprofit called Legends Baseball. We played 15 games up and down the coast. And then a few years ago, I took over my high school varsity head coaching position the same high school I graduated from, Menlo Atherton High School out in the Bay Area. And the first thing that I noticed with my teens was that they weren't getting their licenses. And I was like, that's weird. My licenses. Seniors, their driver's license. I was like, that's weird. Why are my seniors getting picked up by mom and dad? That's really strange. The other thing that I noticed was they were quieter than kids were when I grew up in Menlo Park. And they were kind of stressed out. They were kind of blah, kind of zombie-like. They weren't getting fired up for each other. There wasn't this general level of enthusiasm for each other for each other's successes. Yeah. And I just something just felt off to me.
So people know, roughly when were you growing up and when were these kids growing up, to give some timeline?
Yeah. So I graduated in 2005. So I'm 32 now. Yeah. And I took over the high school in 2016. So it was, a good decade later from when I graduated to when I took over the high school, maybe just a little over a decade.
Yeah, so it's actually not all that long a time to notice such a difference in kids.
No, but look what's happened within that time. Yeah. Between 2005, no smartphone, no ubiquitous technology adoption as far as that goes. Yeah. And then 10 years later, the explosion of the smartphone where, 97% of, or even more, 98% of teens have a smartphone in their pockets at all times. So there was a big shift. Yeah. And I'm not saying that was all because of that, but technology has exploded from the time that I was in high school to today, or even just 2016.
Okay. So you noticed it. One thing that's interesting to me is you're not talking directly about changes in how they're using technology. You're witnessing the side effects of that in their personalities, how they relate to each other, how they relate to you. That's what got your attention.
Yeah, so I'll continue the story, Robert. So what happened was after my second year, I started, these are great kids. Don't get me wrong. I love my kids. I'm still in touch with many of them. They're amazing kids. And none of this is pointing, saying that these kids were terrible or messed up or anything. They're just the product of today's society. And we're seeing this all over the country, all over the world. But it was after the second year that I was coaching there that a parent reached out to me. And I was all about creating a united team culture. Yes, I wanted to develop a winning team and have fun, but I really wanted kids to connect and have an amazing experience. That's what this was all about for me. And after the second year, I thought we were trending in the right direction. I knew there was some clicks on the team, but after the second year, a parent reached out to me and they were like, David, there's a lot of kind of talk right now that kids are just not having fun. They're just not having fun. And I was like, oh man, that sucks. Cause that's all I care about really, was that they're having a positive learning experience. And so I didn't know what to do about it. And I was like, wow, like, am I a bad coach? I really hit a wall because I put up my life into these kids. And I started meeting with every single kid and their parents, 44 one-on-ones. It took me like 3 or 4 days. And they were each about 15, 20 minutes. And we sat it there and we dug in on habits, the team experience, how they were experiencing my coaching, things that I could be doing better, ways that they could have done better, and things that, I could help them with off the field or even on the field. And what I learned through that was my kids were spending it. Well, I remember one of the kids was saying like, what do you do in your free time? He goes, I just spend the time on my phone. I'm just like on my phone. And I was like, oh, I never really thought that like just being on your phone is something to do. It's an activity in and of itself. And so through that process, I learned that my kids were averaging between 6 to 10 hours a day on a device, on a smartphone. And so that was the moment that I was like, okay, let's dig a little deeper here. Maybe this has something to do with why my kids just seem disengaged. They're not having fun. They're not really friends. They're not going to get burgers after the games together and like kind of making fun of each other and ragging on each other. And so I started traveling the country and started talking about this with other coaches. And I found that coaches were seeing the exact same thing everywhere. And so I started to put the pieces together as to why this was happening. And I started reading books. The first book that I picked up was Jean Twenge's book, iGen. And I was like, wow, like she cites a lot of great statistics there, a lot of meta-analysis of studies. And it wasn't until I went out to Detroit and I met with a family friend, and she was a senior in high school, and we're out there for lunch. And I say, Paige, how's your senior year going? And she says, David, I just don't really like it. I'm not really having fun. Everybody out here is stressed out. I literally don't have one friend who isn't on anti-anxiety medication.
Wow.
I was like, wow, that's terrible. That was like verbatim what she said. Next day, I go out to lunch with another family friend. She's a junior, same town, different high school. And I say, hey, Jordan, Paige said that everybody out here is stressed out. Is that true? Like, what's going on? She said, David, it's really bad. I had 2 of my friends, one on my lacrosse team and one on my softball team, 2 of them committed suicide in the last 3 months.
Wow.
And that was the moment where it was like, I got to do something. Mm-hmm. I planted my flag in the sand and I was like, I got to do something. I'm in a great position here in the Bay Area, ground zero for tech adoption and development, where I'm old enough to know a world before technology, but young enough to still be able to sort of relate with kids. I'm in a great position, and I had a network of kids to impact right away so that I could start bringing some more awareness to how they're using their devices and start to make a dent in this depression, anxiety-ridden society that we're living in. And so that's my story. That's what got me started doing it. And, my process and all my failures trying to get my program off the ground is a whole nother story, but that was really what inspired me. And that's whenever I get to those moments of like, why am I doing this? Why am I dedicating my life to this? This is really hard to connect with kids. I'm really fighting against, the tech industry. I think back to those kids that are really struggling. I think back to Jordan. I think about Paige and her friends that lost their lives, and the same things that were showing up for Jordan and Paige's friends were the same types of symptoms that I was seeing in my players. Wow. That's my story.
Yeah, it's really moving. And I do want to talk about what you do with kids, but just one more question before that, which is, you mentioned that the technology you found, both through your direct experience and then what you were reading, was a significant part of the contribution. So I wonder what you can say about that. And without taking up too much time, what are the key additional factors outside of technology? Obviously, it's not the only thing. The economy has changed. There's a lot of other things going on in the world, but maybe speak, mostly to the technological side of it. But what have you found are the major themes driving these changes in the teenagers you work with?
Well, I think the fact that people are so connected, parents are so connected, it's more of like, I feel that parents are wanting to put that bumper sticker on the car, figuratively, like, hey, my kid got into Stanford, or even the kid just being like, oh, thank you so much for the full ride, to UC Santa Barbara, USC, or UCLA, where there's a lot more sort of fronting on social media like that. And so we're more connected. So it's more, that's creating a society where there's just a lot more pressure to perform. And that I think is a huge part of this whole thing. So if you were a fly in the wall in the dugout in one of my baseball teams, what you'd hear kids talking about was cosines and tangents and math equations and where am I going to school and the test the next day, because that's what's so important. That's what's really important to kids. They weren't acting like kids. I think so that's one of the big things that I think is causing the anxiety and depression, and also kids are just not spending as much time out on the streets like they used to for a multitude of reasons. Families back in the 50s, 60s, there used to be an average of 4 kids. Now parents are averaging about 2 kids. And so they're just more on top of their kids, booking them up around the clock with different activities. This is giving them less time to spend time out in the streets and connect with kids face to face and build relationships and social skills and the emotional intelligence necessary to manage their emotions, necessary to navigate difficult situations, whether it be on the field or in real life. I think all these things are creating a society where kids are less equipped to move on to the real world. And it's a lot easier to sit behind a screen and push away all your feelings as opposed to running to people face to face when you're having problems. We're seeing more kids now, post about things and set up fake Instagram accounts. And for many kids, that's a great thing. Many introverts or kids that are facing problems, whether you be LGBTQ or whatever, that is a good outlet for some, but sometimes it's not, and it goes in the other way. And truly these face-to-face interactions are where empathy and social skills are built. And so those are just a few of the things that came up as you asked the question.
Yeah. And I want to talk now about, your approach through America Offline, which, as you said, there can be ways in which technology itself can help address some of these problems, but you've taken a very different approach in America Offline, which is offline experiences. So tell people about what that organization is about and what you do.
Well, I first off want to preface by saying that technology is an incredible tool. Look, we're having a really awesome meeting right now, and we're going to be able to disseminate this message across all sorts of platforms right now, which wouldn't be possible if it wasn't for technology. So I think we can both agree we're not demonizing technology in any way. It's an incredible tool. That said, I want to take it back to the old days where we could teach kids how to reconnect with themselves, reconnect with others, and reconnect from nature by completely stripping down and getting offline and getting off technology. And I've seen total breakthroughs with kids just in going for a weekend retreat, just going off the grid through one of our experiences. Even if we don't even teach them tech life balance tricks or anything like that, the fact that my kids are walking away from these retreats and saying, you know what, I just never knew I could have that much fun with no technology, out in nature with a ball and other kids and hiking. I never knew that it could be that much fun. And that for me is a huge win in and of itself. Obviously, we do other things out there. Some of the greatest moments that I've created for these teens, Robert, is connecting around the campfire, where we could, and it usually takes some time to slip into those moments of vulnerability. Can I tell you one story?
Yeah, absolutely.
And this has happened for me a few times now. And I think about this very often. The first retreat we did was called Legends Unplugged. It was a pilot experience. This was like me just testing out to see if my type of intervention of just going offline for weekend experiences with kids worked. So I like to do lots of, I do workshops and we do lots of games. We sit around the campfire. We'll do a game like hero, hardship, highlight. Name your, walk around. You can either say your hero, a hardship, or a highlight you've been through. We'll ask them like what's, what's your superpower, things like that. And then I usually open up a conversation of like, what are you going through right now? Like, what are you really going through? What is holding you back? What are you struggling with? What's in the middle from where you are right now to where you want to be? And I usually start off by sharing stuff that I'm going through, stuff that maybe even my friends don't know about me. And we go around the circle and kids are pouring their hearts out. We're sitting around the campfire. It's almost like being around the campfire. They don't have to give each other eye contact. You can kind of just see their faces. And so it almost like strips down and makes it so like you really could open up. And when we do this, kids are going around. This is the first time we did it. They said, oh, I'm dyslexic. Oh, my parents yell at me every night because they're stressed out about work. Oh, I feel I have no confidence in my ability to make friends. And they're pouring their hearts out. And these kids, some of them are friends. They're learning things about each other that they never knew. And Robert, every time that I've done this at my retreats, every time without fail, we go around the circle and kids start raising their hand again. They're like, can I share again? Can I share again? Can I share again? And to me, what that's saying is that these kids have never been given the opportunity to truly open up to their friends about their deepest, darkest issues, problems, what's holding them back. And just being able to voice that and express it, maybe you can relate, but that's why there's therapists out there. It is so incredibly healing.
Yeah. And as you said, you said early on that you're not judging them for having the experiences they have. This is just the life and the world they've been born into. But when I hear this, I think back, so I think I'm a generation older than you, you're a generation older than them. And this was just natural. I mean, it wasn't always easy, particularly me with other boys, may not be sharing as deeply, but when you had time that was unstructured, when you were with your friends, there were no devices back then. There was no social media or anything like that. Those were the times when you would let yourself be known to each other.
Well, I'll tell you, like when I was growing up, I was just on the streets all the time. Probably with you too, creating our own fun, kicking the can down the creek, if you will. When I wanted to see my friends, well, we used to talk on the phone, believe it or not. We would talk on the phone, but if not, we couldn't do this.
No.
We would actually have to knock on their doors and bike over to their house and say, oh, hey, Mrs. Jones, is Bobby there? And that's how you built relationships. And we were able to develop stronger bonds and stronger ties and really get to know each other, as opposed to today where we have our phones, we have social media, we have all these different ways to connect, and it's taking the place of those valuable in-person interactions. I'm not saying that kids never hang out with each other anymore. Right. They do, but on the most part, if you look at the research, it's down by a lot. The amount of time kids are spending unsupervised having unstructured play. We need to bring this back. And I'm starting to get more hopeful as I see communities and parents and more people like you and I spreading the message about the need for this. I would love to get to the place where I can drive around my hometown again and there were kids out in the streets, but you're just not seeing it anymore.
Yeah, you don't see it. I mean, I've lived urban, suburban, now rural, and particularly suburban in, the 2000s, 2010s, saw very little of kids being out in the street. So rare that when I did see it, it would take me by surprise because it seemed like such an unusual thing.
Oh God, it's so funny. My neighbors right across the street, they have two kids. I would call them, relatively free range kids. The mom says they're addicted to tech, but whenever they're out there, my wife goes nuts because they'll be playing basketball late at night. And I'm trying to put my 2-year-old down. And she's like, oh my God, they're playing basketball late at night. Like, I'm so frustrated. I'm like, yeah, it's kind of frustrating, but like good. Like, I'm glad there's kids outside playing. Like, this is awesome. So yeah, it does kind of take me by surprise sometimes. And it's just a little more rare, but, I think people are starting to wake up to it a little bit, which makes me happy and hopeful.
Yeah. Well, so tell people, because you said you'd love to see this happening more. You're seeing some helpful signs of it. Tell people a little bit more what your experiences are like, and maybe start telling people how they can find out about you and America Offline, and how they or their teenage kids can take part in these experiences.
I mean, so we're the goal is to do them all over the country. Right now, we officially have online. You could sign up for Dallas, a Dallas location next summer, and then for one in Santa Cruz, Northern California. We're going 12 to 16 years old. They're fairly intimate right now. They're low cost, and there's a beginning, a middle, and an end to them. Meaning, when you sign up with us, we send you sort of like a welcome package, if you will. And by the way, these aren't for kids that are like totally tech addicted. This is just for normal kids. This is just for kids that just want to just connect better and get that driver's ed for their smartphone, but also just connect with nature and just be outside and have fun. And so they're pretty they're pretty affordable. And so when you join us, we send you a welcome package. We have like a digital mindfulness orientation, if you will. Yeah. And then we have the event itself. And then we keep the kids connected through Zoom, something like this. Okay. And so they can continue maintaining the relationships and stay on track with everything that we sort of put in place at camp. We also equip them with blue light glasses, with communal charging stations, with an alarm clock.
Not their smartphone. Not their smartphone as an alarm.
Not the smartphone. But what we will do on the last day, because they're tech-free retreats, but we do reintegrate the smartphone and give it back to them. And we walk them through and we give them some tips and tricks as to how they can bring some more self-awareness to how they use their devices. So a lot of the things that you and I probably know very well, everything from putting it on to do not disturb, to removing, the most addicting apps, to the not the homepage, right. To, limiting notifications, things like that. We walk them through it. But for me, I'm not projecting onto how you should live your life and how you should do it. Let's come up with something that works for you and your family. And with that being said, we also empower the families with a process so that they can teach the kids and mentor them and guide them at home, because ultimately it doesn't matter how much we do with the kids. And if they just go back home and their whole family's on devices all the time, then it really works against everything that we've shown them at camp about how great it can be to incorporate little bits of offline time into their lives. So that's a little bit about our retreats and why they're so powerful.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that last part about the family as a whole, right? It's, you probably would be running against the wind if you just had the teenagers there and then they go back into the home environment where either their siblings or parents or other family members aren't on the same page to some degree about this and being mutually supportive of each other.
Yeah, I mean, it's imperative. There's like this old, I don't know, my recall is not always the best, but there's this old study. It was looking at Vietnam veterans and people in Vietnam, and they were all addicted to heroin. And I'm not drawing translations to heroin, but what they found was the American government was trying to do an intervention out in Vietnam and get all the soldiers off of heroin. They couldn't do it. They couldn't get them off. And then what happened was, as soon as everybody came back from the war and they were in a different environment, like the heroin addiction rates and usage rates just completely plummeted because their whole environment was different. So it's very much environmental. How can we support kids and support families with an environment that is more conducive to be self-aware with technology and limit the device interactions in a way that serves them? Like that's really what we're after. And a lot of that is low hanging fruit. Like there's a lot of little things that you can do within the home that are simple and quick and easy that will actually start to make a difference.
Can you give just one example of that? I'm sure you've got an hour's worth or more of them, but just one simple example.
And some of these things are like cliche, like you hear them often, right? Try to give some like new ones, but like, there is like 4G and now 5G now, but ultimately with a lot of these platforms, like if you control the Wi-Fi, you can control the usage. So I don't know who I was listening to. I think it was James Clear from Tiny Atomic Habits. And you can actually I haven't recommended this too much, but I'm going to try it out for like $10. Those little socket things that will turn off the power on a socket or turn it back on. You could actually put that on, and you could also do this through like Xfinity officially too, but like you could put it on like the socket that controls like your television and your Wi-Fi, and just at 10 o'clock or 9:30 at night, it just turns off and it just kind of like shuts down. So that's one. Great. You know, you hear a lot about communal charging stations. We have this as part of our experiences where, and I like to put them, it kind of depends how your home is set up, but you can have them typically like in the parent's bedroom, away from the side of the bed, like up against the wall, maybe up against the dresser. And then, you know, come up with a family agreement that says, hey, together as a family, to build better connection. And so we can wind down and get better sleep and just connect better and debrief about our days. How about we agree on 9:30 at night? Let's just all put him on that communal charger and we'll get him back the next morning. I mean, there's little things like that that can be done. I really love the alarm clock. I've been testing out alarm clocks. I wish I could run to my, but there's actually differences in the types of alarm clocks. And I've learned this. So I bought one, and originally it was one of the ones that you just like, you say something loud and it'll turn on, but there's like a very bright white light that turns on for like 15 seconds. But anything that's blue or white or very bright, even just glancing at it will keep you up a little bit more. So like, I'm really into the ones that are just more like those digital watches that you can just kind of tap for a second. But having an alarm clock by your bedside instead of your device, just naturally, it'll keep you off your device a little bit more, because our willpower is only so strong. And just having it there. And so I can give a recommendation for my alarm clock, but like, I know people like this for an alarm clock because it's super easy to set. But so I've been testing ones out that like make it so there's less friction and it's just like really easy to set. So like, there's no excuse, like just set the alarm clock. It's easy. You could even travel with it because it's battery packed. So like, those are 3 low hanging fruit ones that, and then I'll just say like the blue light glasses. Do I have them here? I'm not too picky about them. Just go get some blue light glasses. So if you are working at night, or if you are finishing up a show and it's going a little bit past, I'm a very light sleeper. I know that when I'm on devices or my screen's working late at night, I just can't sleep. Like I'll be laying down and my eyes will be kind of flickering, and it just takes me longer to fall asleep. And then when I do fall asleep, I don't get into deep restorative sleep as quick. So these are just a few of the types of things that can be implemented fairly quickly and fairly cheaply.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And I like the recommendation about phones away to the charging station at a certain time, because, you know, I think when you do that, it's you're not giving, no one's giving an order to the family. We must then use that time to sit down together, do something else. But you can then you create the opportunity for that to happen naturally, if that's what people do when the phones aren't there demanding people's attention at that time.
Quick story. So I do workshops, right? And I'll do some of the stuff at the workshops at the retreats. And so I do part of one of the workshops that we play a game called Categories. And I'll start it off and I'm like, all right, categories like shoes. And they're like Nike, Adidas, Fila. And like, then I'm like sodas, and they're naming sodas. And then I go like apps, and then video games. And then we go to things you can do. And you go around, and like one person goes, and then like, if you get stuck, we just kind of like all laugh at you, and it's just kind of fun. Okay. Or if you repeat something that somebody else has said, it's like, you messed up. And then we'll go things you can do at night, not on a screen, inside, not on a screen. And every time I do this, it's like infinite. Kids will be like singing, cooking, face painting, dancing, talking, you know, whatever, maybe origami. And like, there's just infinite amount of things that you can do. And they're all really fun.
That's great.
And then we go things you can do outside with your friends on the street without technology. Same thing. It goes on way longer than shoes or candy brands. It's really infinite. And until you kind of strip down, you take it away and get creative, you don't really discover that stuff. But you'll find that if you try that, families that are listening, you'll find that some really fun stuff will come up for you and your family.
That's awesome. Thank you. Yeah, I always like to give people who are listening something they can do on their own or with their family at home. So that's really awesome. So let people know, where can people go online to find out about you, to see your experiences, and just about America Offline generally.
Yes. So we definitely use online as a tool to spread our message. We are on, just search America Offline. We're the only America Offline out there on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and americaoffline.info. You can sign up for our experiences there. I also love hearing from anybody out there that has questions or wants to connect about these things. You can reach out to me personally at david@americaoffline.info. I also have a podcast just like you, Robert. Just search America Offline with David Klein. I would love to hear from anybody out there that is interested in learning more.
Yeah, that's perfect. And I know you said that right now you're expanding geographically, and I assume that you'd love to hear from people who want one of these in a new place, or perhaps could even help you organize or run one of these in a new place so that they can start spreading around throughout the country.
Totally. Thank you for bringing that up. So we have experienced designers, if you will, that are popping up that want to host these experiences, and we're setting up systems for them so that they can host these meaningful experiences for their communities. Whether you're a rabbi or a church group leader, or you run a boys group, or whatever it may be, or you're just a parent that wants to take out a group of friends, and we can give you all the tools and even everything that you need to run these. So we're doing them right now. We're launching in New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, San Diego, and then we already have ours set up for Dallas and Northern California. But if you're interested in being an offline experience designer and doing some of this work, making a big impact, making a little bit of money in the process, if that's what you desire, then reach out to me and we can get you set up.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I'm so glad we got a chance to share that with people. Well, this has been great. I really enjoyed speaking with you, learning more about what you're doing. It's awesome. So thanks so much for being on the Technology for Mindfulness podcast, David.
Thank you, Robert. Thank you for having me. And I look forward to continuing to develop a strong relationship with you. And thank you for all the listeners out there for listening.
Thanks for joining us for this Technology for Mindfulness podcast with me, Robert Plotkin, and today's guest, David Klein. David is the founder and chief experience officer of America Offline, reconnecting America through transformational offline experiences. You can find out more about David at americaoffline.info.
If you liked today's episode, please subscribe to our podcast and our YouTube channel, and rate and review and share the episode with your friends. We'd really appreciate it. Don't forget to also check out our blog at technologyformindfulness.com to get free and practical tips for beating digital distraction and for being more productive and focused and creative and happy with your technology. And right now, if you go to our webpage and sign up for a free mailing list, you'll receive a free guide on how to manage your technology use and achieve balance with your tech.